Hiya, so I want to talk about grief today. For many of you, you probably think that I'm going to be talking about grief from a loss perspective, as in physically losing someone. Actually, today I want to talk about other forms of grief. As a healer, I see so many different forms of grief, and I think that we often kind of take for granted the grief of falling out with a friend and losing a connection. If you've had a major argument and that connection is severed, when it comes to a relationship breakdown and two people going separate ways, and then there's no communication. It could be that you're going through court communication rather than verbally talking because there's been too much hatred or hurt or guilt or upset. And these kinds of situations cause so much grief, far more than people realise. I have clients come to me and they have had a huge argument with a friend, and it may have been 6 or 7 months since that fallout, but there's been no communication and they're literally going through a grieving process. And quite often that grief and that upset and that trauma is nearly as awful for them as losing someone physically, physically a death in the family, because there is no connection anymore, there is no communication. For some people, they don't even have any closure because they're not sure what they've done wrong. If there's a relationship that's broken down and one person decides they don't want the relationship anymore, and they may well start ignoring texts or calls, not responding, and that is hard. It's hard to deal with the fact that there's an ending, but it's also hard to understand what it is that you have done, and you start questioning yourself. So this is something that I really wanted to talk about today. Because it affects so many people, and I think that we take it for granted because when we think of grief, we often think of actually physically losing somebody, and this isn't always the case. I have people come to me and they've actually got physical issues like ailments that I know through psychically tuning into them when I'm doing my healing is connected to a form of grief, a form of loss, a form of upset. There's actual trauma in the physical body where they have gone through a real heartache. Their heart chakra is completely broken. So, I work on clearing this. I work on cutting those energetic cords with the people that have affected them, and I work on clearing that energy. I work on clearing the physical issues, because what comes with emotional upset is physical, mental and emotional issues. It's not necessarily just one or the other. It can be all three, and it can be very, very debilitating indeed. So you need to look at every aspect of that situation and what has caused it. So I just wanted to talk about that today because, I think for some people they can be a bit embarrassed to show that they're grieving or they're upset or hurt by, a friendship that's broken down, or if their partner has broken up with them a year and a half before and they're still grieving that situation. I think, in all honesty, it's sometimes easier to talk to people about a relationship breakdown in an intimate way than it is a platonic one. So when you fall out with a friend, or, you may well fall out with a family member, and people think, they'll sort it out, but actually quite often there can be real grievances there, and it is painful, it's hard, and it takes a long time to heal if you don't get the right kind of help. And I truly believe that a problem shared is a problem halved. And so if someone, just the minute they kind of send me a message and list what their issue is, they've already released some of that problem, and then it's my job to kind of clear the rest of that issue. But I wanted to talk about this because I do feel it's a big issue, and it's not just the grief of, as I say, physically losing someone and saying goodbye to that soul. You can have grief on so many levels. And it can be just as hard for you when you have a relationship breakdown and a disconnection with somebody and never speak to them again, but they actually are still living. And the reason why I say this is, you know, especially with social media and things like that, you could still be able to see that person's life through images, through videos, if you're still connected that way, but yet you're not physically talking to them anymore, but you can still see their life. And, you know, often, sadly, lots of people only post what they want people to see. So if you're feeling very, very upset and grievanced by a particular person or situation, and you're seeing photos of them enjoying themselves, moving on, that can be incredibly tough as well. So I really like to work with clients here and really clear this, and I see some amazing turnarounds with people who you know, have had such a hard time, and for months and months they've not been able to move on. And it takes just one session for me to clear that, and they have literally managed to feel like they can move on, they feel lighter, they feel happier, their physical issues start to disperse. So yeah, I just want to talk about that. If this is something that really affects you, please do contact me, because I think it's a bigger issue than people realise. And I think that as a society, we all often want to look like we're coping and everything's fine. And I've had clients come to me and say, oh, this sounds really silly, but I fell out with a friend and it's really affected me. It's not silly at all. In fact, it's far from silly, and it's just as hard, heartbreaking and grief-stricken sometimes as when you physically lose someone who goes over to spirit. So that is what I want to chat to you about today. So please do contact me if this has been a problem for you. I'd really love to help you here. And please do post on this video if this resonates with you. Thank you so much. Bye.